What's up everybody? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to go over my initial reactions to UFC France on September 5th, the main event, Dan Hooker versus Salahdine Parnasse. Of course, I'm going to do a deeper dive probably leading up to the match to give like a final prediction before it happens because it's still a bit away. We're not even in August. It's July 30th as of me recording this. However, I have made a prediction, so let's get into it and let me know your guys' opinion in the comments. What do you think? Who do you think is going to win? Now, first, I want to go over the strengths of these two guys. What are they good at? We're going to begin with Dan Hooker. Now, Dan, he has really good striking. We all know this. He trains out of City Kickboxing. His striking is really good. That's kind of what he does. He's a striker first. Now, when it comes to his grappling, I would not say his grappling is that bad because he did fight against Mateus Gamrot and he did win that fight. I did rewatch it just now and he put up a good fight on the ground there. And also compared to Salahdine Parnasse, he's also going to be larger, which is also going to help in his favor. He's the taller man. And what he's probably the most famous for, I'd say, is his durability. It's very good. He's not quite Benil Dariush where yeah, I like Darius, so this is no shade to him or anything. But he can take a punch. He can take a couple punches, no problem. So he has good durability. And of course, there is the experience factor as well. He's been in the octagon so many times. Parnas, however, he has never fought in the UFC. He's making his debut. So, there might be some nerves there. Dan's done this many times before. So that could be in his favor. It could not. It depends. And of course, he's the older guy. He's been in the ring many times. Salahdine is making his debut. So, for him, this is all very new. He's obviously fought a lot before in other organizations, but he's never fought in the UFC, the biggest organization there is. So, there might be some extra pressure that it might help him, it might not. It depends on how he feels. However, there is also some pressure on Dan because he is on a two-fight losing streak, and getting to a three-fight losing streak, that's not really a good sign for anybody, any fighter at all. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean it's over for anyone. He's had two-fight losing streaks before. However, it's not really a good sign. So there might be some extra pressure there, there might not be. I don't know. Also, last note before we move over to Parnasse is he also trains out of City Kickboxing. Dan Hooker trains out of City Kickboxing. They currently have a champion in Carlos Olberg. They're a very good team. They've had Israel Adesanya. I believe Israel kind of left City Kickboxing just now. However, that doesn't mean he doesn't train with the people there. I think he's still friends with most of the people there. Maybe there were just some differences in the way he wanted to train versus how the coaches there wanted him to train. So Eugene Behrman wanted him to train. I don't know, but I believe they're still all on good terms over there. I don't think there's any problems. And they train a little bit with Robert Whittaker as well. I believe they helped him in his camp at the end. And they're close to Volkanovski. They have a lot of skillful people down there in the Oceania region, the Oceanic region. So he's from a good gym, and that helps a lot as well. Now let's move over to Salahdine Parnasse. Now, I want to say I have not watched that many fights. That's also why I want to maybe make another prediction when we get closer in September, because I've only watched like 3 or 4 fights from Parnasse. I didn't know who he was before this fight got announced. However, I did try to look at some highlights and also watch some full fights. I did watch one of his losses and 2 or 3 of his wins. And the thing about him, he's young and he's pretty fast. I noticed that he's very fast, which, that is a good advantage. However, that doesn't mean you'll win just because you're the faster man. And also, he's the younger guy, which usually is an advantage, not always, Just because you're the younger fighter doesn't mean you're going to win. However, it usually helps, you're a lot quicker, a lot more durable probably. You're taking less damage, accumulated less damage. However, we did see with Tuporio versus Gage. I'll come back to that later. Just Gage has been knocked out and submitted, and he's still won against Tuporio, who knocks everybody out. So, you should never write somebody off because of the age. However, it is a factor. Now, when I did watch Parnasse, I did try to notice how's the grappling and everything, and he seemed to fight good on the ground as well. I did watch him against a Polish guy. He did get the TKO by kicking him in the stomach, and it seemed like he was handling this guy well on the ground. Seems good all around. He seems like a good fighter all around. I'm unsure if he is because, like I said, I haven't watched that many fights of him because I didn't know who he was before this. That's no shade, by the way. I only pay attention to the UFC when it comes to mixed martial arts. So I don't really know that many that are outside of the organization. However, he does seem like a good fighter, well-rounded, all-around fighter. However, I don't necessarily think he's going to win in the grappling because he is a smaller guy, and even if you are a striker in the UFC, your grappling has to be at a certain level to even be in the UFC. So I'm not really too worried about that. I think it'll probably be primarily a striking match, but I could be wrong. And another thing for Parnasse is he does also have the crowd. He's fighting in his home in France, so he has everybody there rooting for him. That is probably an advantage for a lot of people. However, it is a little bit of a double-edged sword as well, because there is that extra pressure. Like if you lose, it is a little bit more unfortunate. So it could help him out massively to have the crowd backing him, but at the same time, it could also not help him. It depends on who he is as a person. If the crowd helps him or if it just makes him more stressed. That just depends on who he is. So that might be an advantage, it might be a disadvantage. It's probably an advantage for him, but we don't know that. So to kind of summarize, like when it comes to, who has the most pressure on them, I definitely say Salahdine has the most pressure because he's making his debut. It is in his home, like I just said. However, for Dan, he is on a two-fight losing streak, and you really do not want to make that a three-fight losing streak. I'm not saying if you get on a three-fight losing streak is over or anything like that. Absolutely not. However, it is something to avoid by all means because people start to kind of write you off a little bit when you lose two, three in a row, four in a row. So, but I don't think there's that much pressure involved. That's at least what I gained from watching some interviews. It didn't seem like for Dan Hooker that the pressure is too much for him. It seems like he's just kind of going out there. He's expected to lose. That could help him. Like I said earlier, Justin Gaethje versus Tuporia. Justin was not expected to win. I didn't think he was going to win. Nobody I knew thought he was going to win. Everybody thought Tuporia was going to just go through him really quickly, and that might have helped out Justin. He was kind of fighting a little bit more with no pressure versus Tuporia was expected to knock him out in round one, make it a big thing. So that, just because you're expected to win, that's not always an advantage. Most of the time it is, but not always. There is this weird advantage with being the underdog. Now, this doesn't really matter in sense of like the outcome of this fight, but we can't ignore that there's been a lot of underdog wins this year, like a lot of them. So, I'm just saying you can't really write somebody off ever. That's something I've learned, especially after the Gaethje fight. I understand that, yeah, you cannot write somebody fully off, and Sean Strickland getting the win, like a lot of underdog wins this year. But that doesn't mean that it's going to happen this time, but it might. I believe Parnasse is going to be not the underdog. I think it's going to be Dan Hooker's the underdog, but he has less pressure on him because of this, and that could help him. Another thing that is worth mentioning is they have both lost before, like Parnas is not undefeated. He has lost. He only has two losses, I believe. And I've seen one of them. He got a TKO'd or KO'd, I believe it was TKO. Kind of like this strange. It looked like his opponent hit him with like his bicep almost. Like he kind of went in and caught him here. So it was kind of a weird way to go out, but I don't think he got knocked out cold. I believe it was a TKO. And I don't know how he lost his other fight, but I do believe he came back and redeemed himself with the loss against the KO loss he had, the TKO loss. He came back and got the win against that. And Dan Hooker too, he has been knocked out before. He got knocked out by Michael Chandler. But hey, Michael Chandler, people love to say he's not that good. And yeah, he's not the best, but he was in Bellator. He is skillful, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, even though his record in the UFC is pretty bad. A lot of his opponents in the UFC have been pretty high level opponents, and he did have a career over in Bellator. He hits hard. He is a good fighter, even though he's not that good of a fighter. If that makes sense. Two things can be true at once. So yeah, definitely kind of sucks to get knocked out by him, but still, that doesn't really mean that much. It doesn't mean you're horrible if you lose to Michael Chandler. Some people will disagree with me there, but that's what I think. And again, circling back to this, Justin Gaethje has been knocked out before. Tuporia never been knocked out. Tuporia younger, fresher, faster, better. Gaethje, he's older, he's been knocked out, submitted, and he still got the win because, yeah, just because you have lost before, been knocked out, whatever, just doesn't mean that's just gonna happen every time. You can still get the win. You still have a chance. So it is definitely something to look at. How many times have this person lost? Dan has actually quite a lot of losses. I believe he's at 12. I might be wrong. I'm gonna put it up on the screen how many it is. However, just because you have lost, it doesn't mean that you lose every fight you have. You're like, it's not over, essentially. Just because you've been knocked out before doesn't mean you're going to get knocked out again. You might be at a high risk, but that doesn't mean you'll just automatically get knocked out again. So worth noting. Same goes for Parnasse. Even though he has lost by TKO, that doesn't mean he'll get TKO this time. I am also unsure where Parnasse fights out of, what gym he trains at. I believe he has trained with Saint Denis before, and Saint Denis has won against Hooker. I don't know if they're training together for this, but I did see a clip of them training together, but it was like 2 years ago, or maybe it was even longer before than that. So I'm unsure if the Saint Denis is gonna help him in this camp or not. They are both French, so that might happen, but I don't know. And that is my, I guess you can say, analysis. Not really the most thorough analysis, but nonetheless, my prediction is Dan Hooker. I believe he's going to win. I'm unsure how. It might be a decision. It might be a knockout. I'm predicting one of those two things, but I do actually believe he's going to win this fight. And I will do another follow-up prediction when we get closer to the fight, talk about it again after I've looked at even more footage. But I don't think my opinion about that is going to change. I absolutely believe Dan Hooker is going to win this fight. I just do. So, and also Euros Medic is fighting, and I like that guy. He has been on a pretty good run now with a lot of knockouts. I also predict he is gonna get the win now. He's fighting just any day now. I think it's in a couple of days. I'm not entirely sure, but I believe he's gonna get the win for the main event there. And that is it for this video. I appreciate everybody who's watching, and y'all have a great day. Goodbye.